Hello, everyone. My name is Casey Luaders, and I am the podcast manager for Goodie Nation. And you are tuned into Why Relationships Matter in the Innovation Economy. Goodie Nation is an organization that exists to bridge the relationship gap for so many underserved founders. And we do that in several ways through programming, cohort style learning, mentorship. And one of the ways is what you're tuning into right now by simply having conversations with some amazing founders, VCs, leaders, people in the innovation space who are a part of our mission to help these amazing founders succeed. And so on this episode, we actually have one of our very special board members. We'd love to introduce you all to our board who helps to support our mission because they are amazing and have incredible stories. And so I am going to kick it off with asking Caitlin, who is here with us today, to share with us a little bit about her origin story. So, Caitlin, before you became a board member at Goodie Nation, how did you end up where you are today?
Well, first off, thank you for having me, Casey. So my origin story, I was a kid who moved around a lot, and I think it was really an important growth opportunity to get to see a bunch of different places, different cultures. I think I graduated from like the 14th school I had ever gone to, because it taught me the importance of building really authentic relationships quickly. It just so happened to be that my parents were in corporate leadership, and then in high school, actually, I guess, early high school, late middle school, somewhere around there, they decided to go out and be founders on their own, which was interesting because entrepreneurship was not an existing value in our family or an existing experience in our family. So I got to cut my teeth on growing a business there, and help my parents grow this tax preparation practice here in Georgia, and really got to see the insides, not only of operations, but also what it means to be a founder and the stress that comes with being a founder, and what keeps you up at night and things like that. So, enjoyed that. It, helped support the family. Even at one point, I stepped away from, I took half days in high school in my last semester after I had gotten into college and things like that to be able to help out with the family business and some caregiving things. Went to the University of Georgia, studied international affairs and African studies with a focus in Swahili, and left school and did some international work. So went to Kenya, built a Microsoft Access database, which for anybody who's ever had to work in Microsoft Access knows what a pain that is. Built a Microsoft Access database for this really cool community center that was doing really innovative work around helping kids that were dislocated from family and grandparents. So that was a really interesting time. And what I loved about it was that it was an innovative model on how to rethink orphanages, because these kids would come home after school, they'd get food and education support, like homework support, and then they would go stay with the grandparents in the community. And so it ended food insecurity for both and created a better continuity of care. Came back to Atlanta and joined a growing company called Culture Connect, which I stayed with for about 5 years. And we grew that to a couple of $1 million in revenue, 12 staff, 160 contractors, and then successfully exited in 2015, 2016, thereabouts. Loved that work, loved the ride, growing a company that fast at a young age, because we were in our 20s. All of us were in our 20s at the time. It was really interesting, and it gave me a firsthand experience understanding how much imposter syndrome can really hit you hard. But I think in that role, the first company I built was where I really got a sense of how important the relationships are, because we were learning how to build the business by taking people to coffee, buying people lunch, asking for advice. We had a wonderful board of our own that we were trying to learn from. And what I've learned, at least about the Atlanta ecosystem, is that if you have a need and you put up your hand and say, I'm here's where I'm struggling, this is what I need, this ecosystem will show up. There will be people willing to help out. And I don't know if that's unique to us or if that's just the founder community, but that's been my experience. So, but this was before I knew about programs like accelerators and incubators and things like that. And I remember standing in the doorway of the lady I ran the business with and saying, I don't understand why we're having to learn how to grow a business this way. Like, it feels like we're not the first people in the history of the universe to have to grow a company. It seems like there's a better way. And somebody turned me onto the fact that accelerators were new at the time, or newer at the time. And so Emory was doing research on accelerators, whether or not they were effective, whether or not they did what they even said they were going to do for various communities. And so I went and sought out that team and said, hey, I just want to learn everything that you're seeing. And it turns out they needed an operations person. So I spent a couple years with them growing that program, scaling the program, and building partnerships and getting to know all these accelerators and getting to know the founders they supported. And I think by the time I left, we had north of 100 accelerators that we built partnerships with, and like 6,500 entrepreneurs that we were tracking the development of over time. And it was just phenomenal. The relationships there were also the same kind of experience as I've had in Atlanta. It was super tight. Everybody was looking out for each other. Everybody wanted to see the best for the founders and the ecosystems. There was kind of this rallying cry around the founders. After that, spent some time within Emory helping them do project management. Left Emory and helped build an incubator here in town called Curiosity Lab. Went into management consulting with a firm called 352 that was focused on innovation. And then last fall decided to strike out on my own and do fractional operations consulting, because I believe that growing a business is a learnable, repeatable process. And I also care deeply about founders not burning out. And the reason for that, and I should have mentioned this earlier, both my parents ended up getting seriously ill in the course of running their business, and it switched into me being the primary caregiver for them both, as well as attempting as best I could to kind of keep their business going in the midst of college and running my own startup and things like that. So I know the power of founders feeling supported from their own business growth. I also see the importance of coming alongside founders and helping them to not burn out and to truly thrive, because I see the ripple effects when we have a healthy founder ecosystem. So I believe that's my origin story.
Wow, what an incredible origin story. And you touched on so many different types of relationships. You touched on seeing, a company being built within your home and your family. You touched on branching out and going internationally, even though, you didn't directly say that this is how this international trip affected my worldview on build, like that, like that relationship with traveling and just getting out of, the familiar,
Yeah.
can just really change a founder's mindset. You talked about building a company with your partners. You talked about going out to coffees and getting to know people. You talked about your board. You talked about like a whole bunch of different things. And so one of my questions for you, sort of relating back to the wellness piece
Mhm.
of realizing the importance of founders needing to make sure that they're taking care of themselves. From experience, I'm sure a lot of people listening know from experience, sometimes it doesn't feel like you're not taking care of yourself because you're just like digging, you're in it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh dear,
Yeah.
my brain isn't working. And
Right.
so do you have, for the folks listening, any thoughts or insights about that relationship with yourself, and knowing when to sort of check in and say, wait a second, I think I might need to go, sit down.
Just to take a break.
Yeah.
Um, I think what I've seen from the founders that I know and that I've worked with is that there's always this burning urgency to get more done. It feels like the to-do list that you have or the finish line that you have in your mind never matches the available time left, right? And I would challenge people on that because yes, it's important to hustle, but it's also viable to grow a successful company within normal-ish working business hours and rest, because rest is just an important of a business skill. Your mind will create new linkages, your health will be better, your community will be better, and you need all of those things to be a successful business owner. And we don't talk about this enough, but the duration that businesses exist in our era is shrinking. It used to be that people would build 100, 150-year companies. The average now is closer to like 13 years. So in your lifetime, this business isn't going to be yours anymore. You'll either have sold it or wrapped it or, had to shut it down. But you have to think about the durability of your wellness outside of this business, because there is going to be a time where, odds say that this is not, the forever norm. So I would say slow down, check in, rely on your family and friends to tell you if you haven't had a moment to pause, and be mindful, be as good of a steward of you as a resource as you are of the resources that you give the company.
That's such great advice. And one of the things that has always sort of fascinated me about the Goodie Nation organization in general is hearing almost one of the origin stories from our founder, Joey, about, one day he just needed to talk to somebody about business stuff, and they just met at a bar, and a couple founders just started talking, and that was the catalyst for one of our existing programs, All Founders Need Therapy. And so I'm curious for you, when either you got to that point in the past, or even now as you get to that point of just like, oh my goodness, I just need to talk to somebody. Maybe it's about business, maybe it's about, not business. Are there people in your circle that you're like, yes, I need to talk to them just to get my head clear?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think for me, seeking out the right advisors and mentors has been a tremendous difference maker in my career. So um, I've been lucky to have a very diverse group of folks that would take the time to sit with me as I dumped my head out and got clear on even defining the problem, much less what the options and solutions were. Um, some of those relationships happened organically because I already knew somebody. A great deal of them were because I reached out to someone and said, hey, I saw you speak here. I saw your experience there. I want to understand more about this? Can I learn from you? Can I take you to coffee? Uh, one interesting piece of advice I would give people as they're building relationships with folks, especially ones where you're bringing them in and sort of sharing more about your inner world too, is to circle back and let people know what that advice meant to you. Um, I think sometimes when we have a vulnerable moment with somebody, we might think, oh, I don't want to close the gap because maybe that person already felt put upon. But in reality, if somebody sat with you and saw you in a moment of need or helped you sort out your brain, and then like inevitably they're probably wondering, like, I hope that worked out. I hope that was useful to them. I hope that helped them grow. I hope they, are past this particular issue. So circle back, because I think that has been its own relationship building tool that, here's one piece of advice I heard from you that made all the difference. And I just want you to know that was the big turning point for me.
I think that was a gem that you just dropped. Don't just take the advice, but circle back and let the person know how the advice helped you as a relationship building tool. That's cool. That's cool. And so you mentioned as you were building one of the first startups that you worked with that you had a board that was helpful to you and helping to do that. And now we are speaking to you. You are a person who wears many hats, but in this capacity, we're speaking to you because you are on the board of Goodie Nation.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to know, being a board member, it is a service position. It's a position, meaning that you really care about the organization. I would like to know more about why you are interested in being on the board, what the board means to you, and how you're going to continue that sort of relationship building that you've been talking about like through your whole life as a part of the board.
Yeah. So I've known Joey since about 2017, I think, and have been a supporter of Goodie Nation for several years. And I've loved that the core of the mission is really about building that relationship and building those connections. I think for me, one of my top personal values is, well, really two things. One is about building authentic connections with people so that they feel seen, feel supported. But I also believe that everyone has unique individual powers and experience. Like if you almost think about people like books, for lack of a better metaphor, no one's walked that same path twice in the same period of time with the same challenges, with the same formative experiences. So being able to get to know people deeply and then connect them to folks that are going to help them on their way is a driver for me. So when Joey and I started talking about the vision that he and the board have for where the organization could go and how to continue to fuel the relationships in the community, it felt like a natural place where I could contribute. So I'm excited because of kind of the 10-year anniversary just happened. I'm joining the board now, and I get to see kind of what the next few years are shaping up to look like. And I'm looking forward to continuing to bring in bright people to help drive the organization forward. I think there's so much yet to be done to make underserved founders truly feel supported, truly have access to capital, truly be equally promoted in like an open innovation economy. So I don't think there's any lack of opportunity for other brilliant people to get involved and help drive this forward. And when I had my board, there was I relied on them for professional expertise and their networks and helping us understand how to navigate. And I hope to be able to be that to the team in kind.
Well, I can certainly say we are happy that you are on the board, and we're just looking forward to continuing to work with you. And for anyone else who's curious, if they heard something like, "Oh, that's a good point," or "I like that," can folks reach out to you on LinkedIn? Is there a way that they can contact you? How does that work?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's a great place to find me. I also have, for any kind of professional opportunities, I have my website, ceofconsulting.com. But yeah, if I can ever be of service, reach out on LinkedIn, let me know. Happy to have a chat if I can make it happen.
Amazing. Well, yes, thank you all so much for tuning in to the first of our Meet the Board series here on Why Relationships Matter. Next time you're not doing anything, why don't you reach back out to someone who's given you some good advice and let them know that it meant something to you? That could just be that next little thing that takes your relationship to the next level, or it's just a nice thing to do. You can just do it for no reason. But we hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And as our founder, Joey Womack, always says, stay magnetic and outwork yesterday. Take it easy.